The night in Belfort, the Empire's fortress city, was always cold and damp. The sleet falling from the sky pierced through the slum air filled with exhaust and soot, quietly settling over the filth on the streets. This massive city, where different races and humans lived tangled together, was glamorous on the surface, but its underbelly was no different from a rotting corpse. At a corner of an alleyway, under the dim light of a magic street lamp, a young man stood, Arthur Reynolds. Gripping a worn training iron sword, his fingertips were frozen white from the cold. Raindrops trickled down over a small scar etched on his cheek. Beyond his worn leather armor, his heart was beating against his chest, and deep within that heart, a fragment of the blue star that had fallen from the sky and pierced through his body 3 weeks ago was embedded. With every breath, white mist puffed out of his mouth. Arthur clutched his chest with his left hand, a bizarre sensation, as if a cold ice pick was stabbing his heart, surged through him. It was not pain. It was a kind of warning, an alien resonance where the invisible laws of this world spoke to his soul. Before Arthur's eyes, a translucent blue screen, visible only to him, slowly drifted into view.
Checking user status. The path of chivalry is active. Current rank is Squire. Base aura is 35 points, and proficiency and Imperial basic swordsmanship is 59%. Chivalric auth fulfillment rate is 0%. Warning: underhanded compromises or moral corruption may cause a backlash from the stigmata embedded in your heart.
Chivalry? Are you telling me to keep that noble hypocrisy that only those nobles prattle on about?
Arthur soliloquized coldly and tightly gripped the hilt of his worn iron sword. Having lived his entire life as a vagrant from an orphanage, words like honor or chivalry were nothing but luxuries to him. In this place, where one had to rummage through trash piles for a single piece of bread to eat tomorrow, morality meant instant death. However, the star fragment embedded in his heart was different. It inflicted searing, excruciating pain on his heart whenever he tried to use underhanded tricks, and conversely, it activated his aura only when he followed the noble deeds Jackson had taught him. Just then, from the far side of the dark alley, urgent screams were heard, along with rough footsteps. A small silhouette, running and frantically treading through the mud, came into view. It was a kid from the orphanage, bearing the bloodline of the harsh northern beastmen. Chasing behind the kid was a man of massive build. It was Barrett, a man wearing a leather vest engraved with the symbol of the Golden Balance Merchant Coalition. Barrett let out rough breaths and swung the rusted mace held in his hand.
Get back here, you filthy beastman brat! How dare you touch someone else's goods? Hand over that medicine right now!
The kid ran desperately to avoid losing the small medicine bottle clutched in his arms, but his foot caught in the mud, causing him to tumble hard onto the ground. The medicine bottle rolled into the mud. Barrett wore a cruel smile and raised his mace high. It was the moment the mace was about to fall upon the kid's head.
Maybe breaking one of your legs will teach you a lesson.
Arthur's eyes sank coldly. His body moved before his mind could think. The passage Jackson used to repeat until his ears bled flashed through his mind. To protect the weak, that is the first duty of one who holds a sword. At that moment, the cold energy deep within Arthur's chest turned into a hot flame and spread throughout his body. The star in his heart had reacted.
Conditions met. Detected chivalric oath, protecting the weak. The aura of the stigmata is temporarily unlocked. Aura value temporarily increases to 45 points. A line of light predicting the enemy's attack trajectory is generated.
Arthur's vision was instantly dyed in blue light.
Along the trajectory of the mace Barrett was swinging down, a thin silver line was drawn vividly. Arthur kicked off the ground without delay. Splashing the rainwater, his leaping figure blocked the front of the beastman child like a bullet. The worn iron sword sliced through the air and clashed with Barrett's mace. A heavy, grating sound of heavy metals colliding shattered the silence of the alley.
What is this, Rat? Arthur Reynolds? Why are you getting involved in this?
Get your hand off him, Barrett. Is swinging a mace at a child the way of the Golden Balance Merchant Coalition?
This bastard, really? Are you trying to play knight? You're just a vagrant wearing tattered leather armor.
Barrett stepped back and swung his mace widely once more. It was an attack packed with brutal force, but in Arthur's eyes, his movement appeared incredibly slow and simple. The silver line was showing the trajectory Barrett's mace would draw in advance. Arthur lightly twisted his body to evade the attack. The heavy mace sliced through empty air and struck the muddy ground, and the rebound threw Barrett off balance.
Imperial Basic Swordsmanship, 3rd Form.
Arthur executed the simplest and most flawless movement that Jackson had drilled into him thousands, tens of thousands of times. Lowering the tip of his sword and putting his weight forward, he thrust the blade straight in. There was no flashiness. However, it was a concise and heavy strike forged through extreme training. The blunt tip of the iron sword accurately struck Barrett's chest.
With a short scream, Barrett's massive frame was pushed back 3 or 4 steps. Clutching his chest, Barrett's face contorted in pain. It was clear his ribs had taken a heavy blow. Arthur did not attack further. Instead, he lowered the tip of his sword to the ground and looked down at Barrett in silence. Unwavering resolve was contained in his blue eyes.
Damn it. Did you use an aura? How does a vagrant bastard use an aura?
If you want to fight more, come at me. But next time, it won't end with just a broken bone.
Arthur's voice was low and deep, as desolate as the harsh western wind. Overwhelmed by Arthur's momentum, Barrett swallowed hard. The traces of blue aura emanating from his chest glowed bizarrely under the night sky. In the end, Barrett spat on the ground and backed away.
Just you wait, Arthur. Do you think the Golden Balance Merchant Coalition will let this slide? Next time, you won't even have bones left.
Barrett stumbled and fled into the darkness. Only the sound of cold rain remained in the alley. Arthur sheathed his sword and turned toward the Beastman kid who was fallen on the ground. Then he picked up the medicine bottle that had dropped in the mud and placed it in the kid's hand. The kid looked at Arthur with eyes full of tears, bowed to express his gratitude, and quickly disappeared into the darkness. Looking at that scene, the system window popped up once again before Arthur's eyes.
An act of chivalry has been successfully completed. You rescued the weak and showed mercy. Resonance of the star increases. The permanent value of the Stigmana's aura has increased by 1 point, reaching 36 points. Proficiency in Imperial Basic Swordsmanship has reached 60%. Part of the Squire qualification requirements has been met.
Only 1 point. Chivalry is truly a troublesome compass.
Arthur smiled bitterly and stroked the area near his heart. The pain tightening his chest vanished, and a warm, clear energy lingered in its place. This was precisely the power and the shackle given by the star fragment, a power that could grow only through honest convictions and sweat, without using shortcuts. Just then, along with heavy footsteps from the darkness on the other side of the alley, the sound of a wooden staff dragging on the ground was heard.
Splendid swordsmanship, Arthur. However, the tip of your sword trembled minutely in the final thrust. The hesitation in your mind was revealed in your sword.
The figure emerging from the darkness was a one-armed old man. He was a retired official knight of the Silver Lion Knights and the spiritual pillar who had taken in the homeless Arthur and taught him swordsmanship, Jackson. Despite having lost one arm, his imposing build and sharp gaze proved that he once was a great knight who roamed the battlefields.
Jackson, since when have you been watching?
From the moment you blocked that mace, you moved as if you predicted his attack. It must be thanks to that mysterious stone embedded in your heart.
Jackson glanced at Arthur's chest and smiled bitterly. On the day Arthur obtained the star fragment, the first one to notice the change was Jackson. Jackson knew that the star power Arthur possessed was a dangerous seed that could shake the fate of the Empire.
My sword trembled not because of hesitation. This iron sword is just too light, so I couldn't fully put my strength into it.
Your excuses are as consistent as ever. But remember this, Arthur. Chivalry is not simply a technique for wielding a sword well. It is a heavy chain that binds your soul, and the only lantern that keeps you from losing your way, even in the darkness.
Jackson's voice was serious and heavy. Arthur kept his mouth shut. In an empire filled with the political hypocrisy of the nobility, Jackson was the only person who personally practiced true chivalry. Without the chivalry he taught, Arthur would have already been found as a cold corpse on the streets of the slums.
The Golden Balance Merchant Coalition bastards have been pressuring this lower-class district and the non-human workers even harder recently. Word has it that conspiracy is underway to forcibly invade dwarf and elf territories to increase the mining volume of stellarite, a mysterious mineral coming from the mines.
Why are they so obsessed with that mineral? It must not be a simple gem.
Stellarite is a supernatural mineral that amplifies mana. The ruling class of the Empire and the Golden Balance Merchant Coalition are trying to monopolize it to grasp even greater power. And there is a legend that the star fragment embedded in your heart is the origin and source of all those minerals.
Arthur clutched his chest. His heart suddenly thumped and beat violently. To think the star fragment was the source of stellarite. If the Golden Balance Merchant Coalition or the power players of the Empire found out about this fact, they would surely try to tear Arthur's heart out entirely.
You are saying I could become their target?
Yes, that is why you must become stronger. Without tricks or shortcuts, you must prove yourself. Fortunately, an opportunity has come.
Jackson pulled out a worn iron medal elaborately engraved with the symbol of a silver lion from his bosom and tossed it to Arthur. Arthur lightly caught the flying medal. The medal was heavy, and the cold texture of the metal stimulated his palm as if the long history of the knights was imbued within it.
Tomorrow, the Squire Selection Exam of the Silver Lion Knights will be held in the upper district of the fortress. I will write you a recommendation letter. It is near impossible for a youth from the bottom to enter the Knights, but if you prove it with your skill, no one will be able to question your status.
A squire exam? There is no way the knights would accept a vagrant like me.
Make them accept you. You just need to answer with your skill. That is the only way for you to survive in this unreasonable world and protect your siblings at the orphanage. Arthur, you are no mere knight. The star in your heart might become the final salvation of this empire that has lost its honor.
The trust and earnestness contained in Jackson's deep gaze knocked on Arthur's heart. Arthur tightly gripped the silver lion medal. The sharp edges dug into his palm, but he felt no pain. Only a thrill ran down his spine. Escaping from the lowest status to become a legendary Grand Master. That was the path he had to take.
I understand, Jackson. I will become a squire of the Silver Lion Knights. I will put those pompous nobles in their place with my skill.
Good attitude. Prepare for the exam. But be careful. The forces lurking in the shadows of the city have already begun to move.
Leaving behind those meaningful words, Jackson quietly vanished into the darkness again. Left alone in the alley, Arthur looked up at the night sky. Between the dark clouds, a single blue star was shining faintly. As if resonating with the fragment embedded in his heart, the starlight was cold, yet brilliant. The next morning, the training ground of the Silver Lion Knights in the upper district of the Belfort Fortress was bustling with a large crowd from an early hour. Children of noble families wearing armor engraved with splendid patterns gathered with arrogant expressions, and a heavy silence hung over one side of the training ground. In that glamorous crowd, Arthur stood alone, wearing stained leather armor and a worn iron sword. His appearance was more than enough to draw the ridicule and contempt of the noble youths. Just then, a man draped in a cloak with a red rose pattern stepped out onto the training ground platform. He was a high-ranking knight belonging to the Scarlet Rose, an extremist knight faction that advocated human-centric pure-bloodism. His fierce gaze scanned the applicants gathered at the training ground. When his gaze stopped on Arthur's worn appearance, a mean smirk formed at the corners of his mouth. At the same time, the star fragment inside Arthur's chest began to fluctuate violently. It was not a simple warning. A strong hostility, harboring a blood-colored aura, was radiating from the man on that platform. Arthur instinctively grabbed the hilt of his sword. Along with a pain that felt as if his heart was burning, a blue system window flashed like a red warning light in his vision.
Powerful hostility detected. An unknown threat is approaching. The aura of the stigmata is forcibly unlocked. The surrounding mana concentration is rising rapidly. Prepare yourself.
Why is my heart suddenly doing this? What on earth is this ominous energy?
The hand of the man on the platform slowly moved toward the hilt of his sword. The killing intent he harbored was so brutal and abnormal that it was hard to believe this was a knight's exam, as if implying that the gears of a massive conspiracy were already turning inside the Silver Lion Knights and deep within the Empire. A heavy silence pressed down heavily on the entire training ground. Arthur drew his sword halfway. His great journey was about to begin right here, in this training ground filled with hostility and conspiracy.